The 5 Great Extinctions, when Earth almost died. From the oldest of the 5 events, and in order, up to the most recent mass extinction event. Have you ever wondered if our planet has a secret reset button that nature hits whenever the world gets a little too crowded or out of balance? Number 5. The Ordovician extinction, 444 million years ago. Long before the first blade of grass appeared on land, the Earth's oceans were the only true centers of life and activity on our planet. The shallow, sunlit seas were home to a vibrant metropolis of strange creatures, from the multi-legged trilobites to the massive, shelled ancestors of the squid. The world seemed stable, but beneath the surface, the giant southern continent of Gondwana was slowly drifting toward the South Pole, like a slow-motion disaster. As the land moved over the pole, it triggered a massive, planet-wide ice age that began to lock away the Earth's water into colossal, miles-thick glaciers. This caused the sea levels to drop dramatically, literally draining the shallow coastal waters where almost all of the planet's life lived at the time. Species that had spent millions of years adapting to warm, shallow reefs suddenly found themselves stranded on dry land or pushed into the cold, deep dark. But the nightmare didn't end there. After several 100,000 years of freezing, the glaciers began to melt just as quickly as they had formed. The returning water flooded the coastlines again, but this time the oceans were low in oxygen and filled with toxic metals stirred up from the deep. This 1-2 punch of freezing and then flooding was too much for the primitive ecosystems to handle, and 85% of all marine life was completely wiped out. It was the first time our planet learned just how fragile the balance of life is, and how easily a shifting continent can rewrite the fate of millions of species. This ancient tragedy reminds us that history has a habit of repeating its cycles, and the Earth is a master at clearing the slate to start something new. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into Earth's darkest days, make sure to like this video and share it with a friend who loves history as much as you do. Number 4. The late Devonian extinction, 360 million years ago. The Devonian period is often called the Age of Fish, a time when the oceans were teeming with experimental life forms and massive, armored predators. While creatures like the Dunkleosteus ruled the deep with bone-crushing jaws, a quiet revolution was happening on the land as the very first forests began to spread. However, this green expansion turned out to be a double-edged sword for the planet's ecosystem, as the success of the trees became the downfall of the seas. As these primitive trees grew larger, their complex root systems began to dig deep into the earth, breaking down solid rock into soil for the very first time. When the rains came, these roots washed an enormous amount of minerals and organic nutrients into the rivers, which eventually flowed out into the open oceans. This sudden buffet of nutrients caused massive global algae blooms that grew so thick they blocked out the light and consumed every scrap of oxygen in the water. This created invisible dead zones stretching for thousands of miles, where fish and other marine creatures literally suffocated in their own environment. At the same time, the massive amount of CO2 being pulled out of the air by the new forests caused the planet's temperature to drop sharply, leading to a global chill. Imagine being a fish that is both starving for air and freezing at the same time. It was a biological crisis that many species simply couldn't survive. By the time the environment stabilized, about 75% of all species had vanished, including many of the unique armored fish that had defined the era. Do you think it's fair to blame the trees for being too successful? Or is this just nature's way of showing us that every action has an unexpected reaction? The Devonian extinction teaches us that even life-giving changes can have lethal consequences if the environment cannot process the transformation fast enough. As we look at our modern world, do you ever wonder if our own advancements are creating similar dead zones in the oceans today? Number 3. The Permian extinction, the Great Dying. 250 million years ago, the Permian period was a time of strange and wonderful biodiversity, featuring sailback creatures and early ancestors of mammals roaming the vast deserts of Pangaea. But this era would conclude with the most devastating event in the history of life on Earth, a catastrophe so grand it earned the nickname the Great Dying. The culprit was located in what is now modern-day Siberia, where a massive volcanic region known as the Siberian Traps began to erupt with apocalyptic fury. These weren't just standard volcanoes. They were massive fissures in the ground that poured out enough lava to cover the entire United States in a layer a mile thick. As the eruptions continued for hundreds of thousands of years, they released staggering amounts of methane and carbon dioxide, cooking the planet from the inside out. Global temperatures spiked by as much as 10 degrees Celsius, turning the land into a barren wasteland and causing the oceans to lose almost all of their life-sustaining oxygen. The water became stagnant and filled with toxic bacteria that released poisonous hydrogen sulfide gas into the air, further choking the struggling land animals. This was a biological wall that almost no one could climb over, as the complex food webs that had taken millions of years to build collapsed within a geological heartbeat. In the end, a heartbreaking 96% of all marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrates were completely erased from the fossil record, leaving the planet nearly a ghost world. It took millions of years for the Earth to recover from this blow, as the few survivors had to rebuild the entire biosphere from a tiny handful of genetic blueprints. It remains the most extreme reset our planet has ever experienced. A reminder that under the right conditions, Earth can become a furnace that few can survive. The sheer scale of the Permian disaster makes all other extinction events look like minor inconveniences, highlighting the raw power of geological forces. Number 2. The Triassic-Jurassic extinction. 200 million years ago. After the world recovered from its previous scars, the Triassic period saw life blossoming again on the massive supercontinent known as Pangaea. Early dinosaurs like the nimble Coelophysis were just starting to evolve, sharing the land with the first tiny mammals and massive, crocodile-like reptiles. But the Earth's crust is never truly still, and soon the supercontinent began to tear itself apart as tectonic plates shifted in a violent divorce. This geological breakup opened massive rifts in the Earth, leading to volcanic eruptions on a scale that modern humans have never witnessed or could ever imagine. In reality, lava will be ejected as shown in the image on the right, and the lava flow will engulf everything as shown in the image on the left. For nearly 1 million years, rivers of molten lava flowed and colossal amounts of carbon dioxide were pumped into the atmosphere, creating a runaway greenhouse effect. The planet's temperature soared, and the oceans became increasingly acidic and starved of oxygen, making life underwater a desperate struggle for survival. Do you think the dinosaurs thanked the volcanoes for getting rid of their bigger, scarier competition? Or were they too busy just trying not to melt? Let us know in the comments below. If you were a tiny Triassic dinosaur, would you try to hide in a cave or just run for your life? The environmental stress was so intense that about 75% of all land and marine species vanished forever, unable to adapt to the rapidly changing climate. In this chaotic nightmare, many of the large, dominant reptiles of the Triassic were wiped out, leaving vast, empty territories behind for the survivors. Ironically, the smaller, more resilient dinosaur lineages were the ones who managed to endure the heat and the toxic air of the volcanic era. As the smoke cleared and the lava cooled, these survivors stepped into the power vacuum, beginning a dominance that would last for the next 135 million years. Number 1. The KPG extinction. 66 million years ago. For over 160 million years, the Earth was a playground for the most magnificent creatures to ever walk the land, the dinosaurs. From the thunderous footsteps of the long-necked titans to the terrifying presence of the Tyrannosaurus rex, their reign seemed absolutely unshakable and eternal. However, the universe had a different plan, and the end of this golden age didn't come from a slow decline, but from a sudden cosmic catastrophe. A massive asteroid, roughly the size of Mount Everest, hurtled through the atmosphere and slammed into the Yucatan Peninsula with unimaginable velocity. The energy released upon impact was equivalent to billions of Hiroshima-style atomic bombs, detonating at the exact same moment in a single spot. In an instant, anything within a 1,000-mile radius was vaporized, while the impact sent a shockwave that triggered earthquakes reaching magnitude 11. Giant walls of water, some hundreds of meters high, raced across the oceans, swallowing coastlines and reshaping the very geography of the continents. As the debris from the impact was thrown into space and fell back down, the friction heated the air to the temperature of a pizza oven. Global wildfires ignited almost simultaneously, turning the lush prehistoric forests into a hellish landscape of smoke and charred remains for months. Soon after the fires died down, a thick, suffocating shroud of soot and sulfur blocked out the sun, plunging the world into a long, frozen darkness. Photosynthesis ground to a halt, causing the plants to wither, which led to the starvation of herbivores and, eventually, the apex predators that hunted them. When the dust finally settled after several years, about 75% of all species had been erased, leaving only the small and the lucky to inherit the earth. Don't let your curiosity go extinct. Subscribe now and hit the bell icon to stay updated on our next deep dive into the amazing secrets of our planet. Join our community today and never miss a single moment of history's most incredible stories.